Greetings everyone, Tim Anderson here, aka Renfell, and welcome to the latest episode of the Lotro Cooking in Real Life series where I take recipes either from the Lord of the Rings Online MMORPG or the Lord of the Rings books and I put them into real life use in my home kitchen and of course here at YouTube and Patreon. This week's episode is the Feast of Rohan, which I had a lot of leeway with because the Lotro recipe doesn't actually say what's in it. It just says this big hearty meal for the Rohirrim. So I was like, okay, what would be a big hearty meal that they would be able to make out in the field while they're roaming about chasing orcs? And I was like, pot over a campfire, probably a stew. So I went ahead and made a delicious um, roast with ale. Basically, an ale roast stew. And you can use pork or beef. In this case, I used beef. I actually prefer this with a chocolate stout, but this time around I did it with a double malt. It was still delicious, but I still think the chocolate stout wins out. But I'll let all of you be the judge of that. So let's go ahead and dive into this. But before we do, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon so you get updates when the next recipes are available or when I go live with the streams or any of the other videos that I do. And of course, don't forget to check out the Patreon below, which has the full recipe as well as all the photos from the photo shoot. And there's a lot of other subscription perks that you can pick up over at Patreon as well. So here or there, we'll see you in both. Without further ado, let's dive in to the Feast of Rohan. All right, the most important part of any Feast of Rohan is, of course, the meat, which we're going to place in there just like that. Next up, we're going to just put in all of our onions. And then we're going to put in our potatoes, garlic, and carrots. We're going to put some romero in here, some fresh pulled romero, some salt, some black pepper, some parsley, and some thyme. And of course, one of the best secrets of this recipe, as any good hobbit or Rohirrim will tell you, which is some ale. Now I use double malt. You can also use chocolate stout. Put a whole bottle in there. Don't be afraid of it because it is going to reduce as you cook it down. This is going to add some sweetness to the recipe. Alright, the next thing is to get this into the oven. My pan is almost too big, but it's going to go in here. And you're going to want to go ahead and top this off. Go ahead and cover that. To cook this, the most important thing to remember is that, as with any roast, whether it's a beef roast or a pork roast, go on the internet. You'll find tons of cooking times and everything else. This one is a kilo roast. I'm going to be cooking it for about 25 minutes per pound. So we're looking at right out about an hour of cook time, and I'm going to be cooking on 375. But again, check your altitude, check your size of your roast, the weight of your roast, everything else. That will determine how long you're going to cook it in the oven. And then go ahead and close this, and we'll be checking it in about 30 minutes to stir it and mix up the veggies. Alright, it is now 30 minutes in, so it's time for us to go ahead and pull this out. And we're going to go ahead and take the lid off. Alright, I have moved this over to the stove so that I've got a little bit of a better view on things. And you can look here, we've got this delicious juice from the double malt ale, and of course all of our vegetables and everything else. And what I'm going to do here is I'm basically just going to come in here and I'm going to mix everything up and make sure that all the veggies are getting a chance to get down in there in that broth. And when I put this back in, I'm not going to cover it this time because I want to reduce it. I want to go ahead and reduce some of that liquid in there. Alright, it's time to get this back in here, so we're going to come over to the stove and put this back in the oven. Now remember, I'm not going to cover it this time, and we're going to put it back in for around another 30 minutes. It doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be done. We're going to check it again at the 30-minute mark. Alright, time to get this over to the stove, get it cut up and served. Alright, I've cut some of this off, and now it's time to go ahead and get this served so that we can enjoy our Feast of Rohan. Alright everybody, it is time to sink our teeth into this delicious Feast of Rohan. Now I took some creative liberties with this because the recipe actually didn't say what was in it. So I basically, you know, as you've seen, we've done a beef ale stew, and I'm going to sink my teeth in. A little bit of garlic too. Come here, Mr. Garlic. He doesn't want to be eaten. One of the best parts about making this recipe is that if you're doing like what I did and you use a roast that is, 1 kilo, a couple of pounds, you've got enough food for all week, depending on how many people there are in your family. There's 2 of us, so for us, we're going to get about a week out of this. So hopefully you enjoy as much as I did, or as much as I do, I should say. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon so that you get updates for when new videos are available. And of course, also don't forget to check the link below to the Patreon page where you can get the full recipe for this, pick up a subscription, support what I do here, and I will see everybody else in the next episode when we cook something else delicious from the Lord of the Rings Online or the Lord of the Rings books.